Hi, I'm Peterson Toscano, and this is Bubble&Squeak, a podcast with uncanny sounds, funny interludes, and stories, most weird, many true. Okay, here's Season 3, Episode 8. Our show today comes in 3 parts. Part 1, Mase III, a black, trans, queer poet and educator, talks about collaboration, reparations, art, and a fabulous trans Bible character. Part 2, Mase performs Josephine. And Part 3, a sound slice of Orthodox Christians in procession on a busy New York City street. Mase III is an educator who has worked extensively with US, UK, and Canadian communities. He focuses on the needs of LGBTQIA+ individuals and racial justice. He is the founder of Awkward, the first talent agency dedicated to trans and queer people of color. As I stood on a busy street in Chicago, I chatted with Mase, who was in Los Angeles.
I think that a lot of my work is about centering community and just creating the theology and creating the work that we need. Largely, when we talk about reparations, it is only specifically from a black and white context. And I do try to explain to people that there's a role for everybody in the reparations movement, simply because our lives are so interconnected, especially as we talk about race and racial injustice. When we talk about the experiences of black trans people, period, it's like we're talking about communities of people that largely oftentimes do not have access to stable housing, do not have access to jobs, do not have access to basic safety, right? We see a huge gap often in this conversation around reparations that does not imagine black people as leading intersectional lives, which is very wild. People imagine if by merely saying the word reparations or putting together a reparations plan, that all black people that have been impacted by chattel slavery will somehow get the things that they need. And so we find it to be very important to talk about reparations from an understanding that acknowledges trans and queer folks, disabled folks, women and femmes, that understands blackness as multifaceted existences, so that as we create reparations plans, that we can make sure that everyone is taken care of. I'm currently collaborating with one of my co-writers, co-imaginers in the world, Lady Dame Figueroa Didi, who is someone I co-directing the Black Trans Prayer Book with and co-edited that with. And she's also my collaborator in a lot of different things, working on a musical together. She's my biggest arts collaborator in the world. I was sitting around and I was like, there needs to be something that specifically addresses our experiences around religion as Black trans people across different faiths, across different identities. I'm not capable of doing that on my own. I don't mean that in a pejorative way. I don't mean that in like I'm not smart enough, or I'm not perceptive enough, or I'm not whatever. It is too big of a responsibility for me as one person to think that I can be in charge of that. There needs to be collaboration on this. So I remember saying today, I think there's this thing that I want to do, and I know that I can't and shouldn't do it on my own. And I think I'm supposed to ask you. You seem like the person I'm supposed to ask to do this with. She was like, yeah, we can do this together. And we were trying to figure out, this is going to be a thing we wrote together just by ourselves. And also, again, this is not something that we should be doing just by ourselves. And so we put out calls to reach out to people all across the known universe to be able to do this work with us together. There's, a lot of movements, obviously, about getting the U.S. federal government to federal and local governments to acknowledge the need for reparations. That's accurate, that the U.S. federal government and that local governments benefited greatly from the enslavement of Black people and from the subjugation of Black people, right? And lots of other people also benefited from that, right? So individual families benefited from that and continue to benefit. There are banks that have existed since the transatlantic slave trade that we still have our money in, things like that. There are universities, there are all kinds of corporations and other institutions. And so it's getting people to understand really how much the transatlantic slave trade has impacted the Western world, has impacted the U.S., has impacted so many different systems. It is imperative for all of us to get involved in reparations. Imagining it outside of even just Black-white dynamics, our struggles are interconnected, and the ways that we are pitted against each other means that we have to be involved and invested in our collective survival. Art is the imagination tool that allows you to see and make things possible that weren't before. I used to say this more before, there was a bunch of billionaires trying to compete in a pissing contest to get onto the moon, but it took an artist to imagine with everyday people that it was possible to be among the stars, right? It took an artist, and it took people who could write poems. It took people that could make drawings. It took people that could paint. It took all these things to make certain scientific advancements seem possible. When it comes to reparations, when I think about artists and arts, it's like the role that we play, and it played from the beginning, is getting people to understand visualization, that if you can visualize something, you can make it happen. The Pew Center did a study a little while ago that said that about something like 77% of Black Americans believe that reparations were necessary, but only 7% of us actually believe that it was possible in our lifetimes. And so I talk to people all the time about being in the 7%, that I believe that reparations is possible. And by the time we're done working together, by the time we're done talking, I want everyone to believe that reparations is possible. And I want to move that number of 7% into 100% of folks that believe that reparations is possible in our lifetimes. Art, like I said, makes everything possible because we help to create the plan. We help to lay the foundation for people to know in their bones that something can actually be realized. Everyone deserves to live and be well and thrive. We live in this world where people have confused themselves into thinking that because they've earned a certain paycheck or they've earned certain capital, that they've somehow deserved that more than other people. There's this belief that only some people work hard. I was talking to someone the other day who they felt bad. They felt like they hadn't put in a good amount of work for the day. And I was like, well, let's talk about your day. And so they spent what they felt like was like maybe 3 hours of doing the actual work for the day. And I was like, yeah, you spent maybe 3 hours at your computer typing stuff. But I'm listening to you. I was like, it sounds like you spent 7 hours being stressed out about money. You spent hours being anxious. You spent hours being scared of losing your housing. You spent all this stuff. Like, that is also like a lot of energy that you're expelling, right? So it's not even just about this stuff. It's also about the conditions that you're living in. Actually, your whole day is work, right? Even when you say you take it off, you're actually too stressed out to be resting. As we talk about theology, we talk about economics, we talk about art and all these different things. My hope is that people are able to better understand their role in social movements and not wait for other people to give them permission to act. Out of all the things in the world, like the number one thing that people can do kind of coming away from this talk today is, one, they can move financial resources someplace. So I would just always encourage people to do that. And especially in this time of genocidal violence that we're witnessing, all these other things, different things that are happening in the world in which we're losing so many people, that I hope people are not immobilized by the pain of the world and understand the urgency that we're in. It was sitting in transfigurations, however many 5 million years ago that was now at this point, and hearing and you doing Esau and like talking about this perspective of Esau witnessing Joseph and talking about this potentially trans nibbling of Esau's, right? That really sort of flipped a switch in my head, and I kind of became obsessed with Josephine, right? Like I became obsessed with this story because the more that I looked into it, the more I was thinking about Josephine as a survivor of incarceration, as someone who was a survivor of sexual assault, as someone who was a survivor of so many things, but more than all that, was able to prophesize and see themselves in dream. And that for trans people, to see yourself beyond what cis people have ordained for you is such a trans story, right? Because at that point in my life around theology, I think I was so much in the defensive theology mode, and in this place of like having to disprove all these different scriptures. Yours was the first time I actually really sat with and understood what liberation theology was.
So Philly is my home, like hands down, all that kind of stuff. When I was 11, though, I was living in a rural town in South Jersey. So when I was in this rural town in South Jersey, I didn't know what the word gay was, what trans was, what queer was. But I knew that for whatever I was dealing with in the world, I was going to hell. So I learned that pretty quickly. So this is a poem that I wrote pretty recently based on just some really great people in my life that I've gotten to meet over the years. And this is called Josephine. Yes, let's go. Woo. She asked if she can talk to me about Jesus at 3 a.m. on the C train because something about my queer face means clearly I'm on a path straight to hell. I've come to expect this type of reaction from strangers at least once a week since the first time I was exercised at 16. But today I've grown tired and I've decided it is my turn to proselytize. So before you do any of that, I want to know from you, have you heard the good word about Joseph of Genesis? See, Josephine, Joe of Genesis, favorite child of Jacob, aka Israel. When asked what she wanted, you desired one thing. I kept on that passing. Pastor called this a real code, and Joe, I had never read the Bible before, found you and kept reading. Josephine, I got to 2 Samuel and realized your coat of many colors was a princess dress. Joseph, your father must have really loved you because he got it for you and you wore it with pride. Joe, when your brothers saw you in your flowing dress, in your glory, they became enraged. I am sorry for the beating you received. Sorry they destroyed your dress and smeared it with the red paint of your swollen veins. Josephine, did you know they told your father you were dead? So he never come looking for you. Never knew your brothers sold you as a slave into Egypt. And once you were stolen from your home fields, the earth dried up. Joe, the very ground on which you walked, mourned the loss of his genderqueer child, and all the plants died, and the animals no longer had the will to live. Josephine, your family nearly starved. Saw the formation of ribs where once there grew flesh and belly fat, and they, hungry and desperate, traveled into Egypt. And what must they have seen, Joe? See, in Egypt, people discovered you, not as a fad, not as tranny. They saw you in totality. You went from slave to leader over lands. There you were, Josephine, as you, as magnificent. And your family couldn't even recognize you through the glare of divinity. But you saw them, shivering in fear, waiting to hear what this regal leader might say, wondering if your spirit might see fit to grant them the grain needed to survive. And Joseph, love, broke through the darkness of resentment. And for the first time, your family saw you, as magnificent, for it was your word that saved them from starvation, dear Joseph of Genesis, aka Josephine, aka Joe. I'm claiming your story for every queer kid told that we're unholy, for every queer told that in order to love we must let our faith die. I'm gonna put it in a pile in my heart, next to Ruth and Naomi, next to David and Jonathan, next to Haggai and Deborah, and sing them at the last Passover with Jesus and Lazarus. Yes, I'm taking Jesus with me too, dear pastor. To you, who claims your words are from God, but whose book is pledged to King James, know what allegiances you keep. You've been lying about my people for too long. Yeah!
Let me set the scene for you. I find myself standing on East 2nd Street in the heart of the Lower East Side of Manhattan, just outside Anthology Film Archives. The air is alive with singing and the gentle chime of bells drifting up the street. As I turn my gaze, a procession of people comes into view in an Orthodox Good Friday procession as part of a Vesper service. A sense of solemn reflection and deep reverence hangs heavily in the air. Learn more about Mase III at his website, jmaseii.com. That's spelled JMaseii.com. jmaseii.com. 3 I's. Feel free to say hi to me on TikTok or other social media, or when you see me walking around Sunbury, Pennsylvania. Oh, and thanks for listening.